There is so much hype about growth. It's about getting your revenue up and up. And when we ask founders about churn, they say it's 3%. Well, that doesn't mean anything to us as VCs here at Headline because it doesn't tell us actually about what is going on with your business. So we're going to talk today about retention. Let's dive in. Today, we're talking about retention, and I am twisting Nick's arm. We hung out last week, and he was nerding out about retention. So I said, Nick, you need to nerd out about retention with the rest of us.
Excited to be here. Love talking about retention. It's arguably one of the most important metrics out there.
When we look at companies, why should we be focusing on retention above even growth?
Headline's been investing now for 25 years, and we have seen that retention is probably the single most impactful metric as far as predicting future success of the business.
So how would you break down net retention for all of our founders? Like, what are the underlying things that will actually impact net retention?
Overused analogy to explain retention is the water bucket, but it's a really great way to actually talk about what retention really means. A business acquires new revenue or has revenue, and in this case, the analogy to that is it's a bucket of water. And the question is, after a month or a year's time, how much of that water actually remains in the bucket? When we talk about net retention, given that there's two forces that can impact this bucket of water, the water can fill itself up or leak out of the bucket. When we bring that back to the business can experience what we call churn, which is water leaking out of the bucket, or expansion, which is about customers spending more with the business over time and therefore magically filling up the bucket from the inside out. And the question is, when we have a bucket of water that has 100% of water in it in one period, how much of that water is still in the bucket in the next period, net of expansion and churn? When we have 110% net retention, then the bucket actually magically filled itself up by 10%. If we have 90% retention or 10% net churn, means that 10% of that water was lost.
We had a conversation. You actually said, quote, net retention isn't the only metric to be looking at a business. Now you're talking about net retention, but you back then you said, well, it's not the only way of looking at a business. Why is that?
Net retention for businesses that have less than 100% revenue retention almost doesn't really mean anything. Let me actually explain this using Deepdive. Most businesses that go after SMBs or consumer businesses actually have, or kind of what we call asymptotic retention. What that really means is that you have a new cohort of customers coming in. Every single data series here represents an individual cohort or a group of customers that join the business in a given month. And they'll generate 100% of revenue when they first come in their respective life month one. And the question is, how much of that revenue remains with this business over time? And what you'll see is that there's a certain level of churn in the first couple of life months, these cohorts dipping down. But once a cohort has been around for give or take 6 months in this instance, they start flatlining, or all the revenue stays stable or stays with the business every single life month subsequently into the future. So all the churn actually happens within the first couple of life months with the business as customers sign up to a product, they try it out, and some of them learn, hey, this is not for me, and they churn out and leave the business. But once you've used a product for 6 months' time, you're in it for life. You're going to keep using it every single month into perpetuity. And therefore, we actually see in most businesses the bulk of the churn happening within the first couple of life months of a new customer joining a certain product. Now, what does that mean when we look at net retention? The faster a business is growing, the more customers proportionally will be in the high churn life months of that kind of entire customer base. So the faster you're growing percentually, the higher your churn rate actually will be. Vice versa, if you actually slow down your growth rate, your growth percentage over time, you're going to have proportionally less customers in these high churn life months, and therefore your churn rate will go down and your revenue retention goes up. And therefore, when companies come to me and tell me, hey, our net revenue retention is increasing over the last couple of months, and I subsequently see that their growth rate has been slowing down as well, their retention dynamics aren't actually getting better. What has really happened is that the business is growing slow, which generally is not a good thing.
That is mind-blowing, because basically what you're telling me is, if I'm this business and I'm like kind of mature and I do absolutely nothing, over time, my revenue retention actually grows because there's just less new people coming in.
Absolutely.
What should smart founder Conrad do? How should I be thinking about it?
What we like to look at is what we call revenue retention side cuts. to compare the revenue retention of different cohorts on an apples to apples basis, we want to look at where is the revenue retention of each cohort after a certain point of their time. So let's just take after the first 30 days here in life months 2, how much of the revenue has stuck around essentially for each cohort after the first 30 days. And for this, we take all the data points, take like a vertical slice here after life month 2, and map them out chronologically for each cohort, over time, and can see that, each cohort, how much revenue retention did they have after their first respective life months. You can see that, initially it hovered relatively stable around kind of the 50, 60, 70% mark. And then actually over the last couple of months, it's been consistently getting better, telling me that some of the more recent cohorts are, improving in revenue retention after the first 30 days. And we can then map this out for each cohort, after life months 2, after life month 6, or, even after life months 12. But one thing that you'll see is that every single kind of later life month, we're going to lose data because we simply don't have a lot of cohorts for which we have a year's worth of data. You get less and less data the further out you look.
That's my mind being blown, Nick. Thank you. This is how you guys need to think about how you incentivize your sales and your customer success teams appropriately. You need to be able to track things through the cycle. Nick, thank you for nerding out on retention for us.
Anytime. Happy to be here.
Okay, well, thank you all. I hope you found this to be really helpful. If you like this, thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll be back next week for a deeper look into cohort analysis and retention.